Also, UD वो D&D वगैरह डाल देना.
Yeah, I don't have my phone here anyway. It's fine.
Oh, we're live. Hey, hey, hey. Thank you so much for joining us, Yudi. Hey,
Hey,
everyone.
hey, Shreyas.
Hey, everyone. My name is Shreyas. I'm the head of marketing at Plum. And this is episode 3 of season 2 of People of Success, People and Success, where we talk to people leaders from across industries about talent, hiring, people success, and so much more. Today, we are talking to a dear friend, Udayan Walvekar, popularly known as Yudi, about balancing budgets and benefits. Welcome to the show, Yudi.
Hey, Shreyas. Super excited to be here, man. First of all, I think I just like find it so funny. Right from Shreyas is taking my interview to like so many more interactions across GrowthX now to now here at Plum. It's really good to be here and especially talking to you. And hello everyone, whoever's joining in. How's it going? I hope your week's been treating you pretty well. I know it's just Wednesday, but it might feel like a Friday. You want to feel it like a Friday, but it's just a Wednesday. But yeah, Shreyas, super excited to be here, man.
Awesome, awesome. So, Yudi, I'll cut to the chase, right? You're popular as a growth expert. The entire country, world now knows you as a bit of a growth leader. But today we want to talk to Yudi, the entrepreneur, the people leader, the person who went from being a star employee at Razorpay to building such a promising business, right? So much about your experience is important to prospective entrepreneurs. First, early employees at a business, or even people leaders in general who are trying to build their team from scratch. So as the practice goes, I hope you have your beverage. We're going to start with an icebreaker. Never have I ever. And I know you and I have played a couple of these in the past, but we're going to do this live on video for the first time.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Awesome. Awesome. Also, let me ask the audience if you have a beverage handy, it could just be water. You should take a gulp, you should take a sip, or at least let us know in the comments if you've done any of this. Right. So the format, as you know, UD is I'm going to set up a premise. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to say, never have I ever X. And if you've done it, you take a sip. Right. Number 1, never have I ever debated employee experience budgets with my people success team.
Am I supposed to give truthful answers?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, of course I have. I have 100%. 100% I have.
Yeah, all right. Take a sip. Take a sip.
I
Awesome.
took the
We'll jump to the
strongest
second.
coffee. I took the strongest coffee that I could find, and I feel like Shreyas is going to make me, like super caffeinated by the end of this session.
You want to give a shout out to the coffee brand?
Um, Sleepy Owl, I love you folks, but I'm right now having Supco.
Okay. Oh, yeah, sure. All right. Question number 2. Never have I ever walked out of a financial planning meeting feeling dissatisfied.
I think everyone's gonna chug probably. Yes, like everyone's like even the finance people walk out, disappointed. So yeah, I think there's no winning there.
Cool. Just don't even lower the mug. I know you've done this. Never have I ever had a candidate reject or accept an offer on the grounds of employee benefits.
I'll have it. I'll just have it now.
Awesome. Cool. Let's dive deep, right? Like into Yudi, the professional, Yudi, the entrepreneur, Yudi, the people leader. You went, like I said, from being a star employee at Razorpay while we were there together into building your own business. How do you look at benefits? What changes from a perspective going from an employee to a founder?
Got it. Yeah, I think would love to double down there, but just like quick, I want to just get a quick check about the audience. Who here has ever thought about going from an employee to founder? Reply in the chat saying yes or reply with anything, right? So that I'll come to know. I know there is some delay between us saying something and actually the comments coming in, but I'm looking at them. I want to really understand because a lot of people I'm sure Shreyas included, has thought about starting something of their own, right? And I was no different. I started as a side hustle that became a community, and then went on to build GrowthX full time, right? Now, my journey has been quite interesting. In hindsight, might seem like, okay, this person knows what they're doing. I didn't. Okay, I had no idea what was going on. But to come back to your specific question, right? Employee benefits for me, I think, is a little bit different. For me, employee benefits is not that document which has all the perks written in about someone, right? Or it's not about fancy offers, right? Sure, they are cherry on the cake, but the cake to an employee or the cake to a professional, or at least for me and you and a lot of people, is their professional growth, right? And it's a holistic growth, right? Professionally, how do I feel? Mentally, how do I feel? Physically, how am I feeling in this company, right? And emotionally, how am I feeling in this overall scheme of things where I'm doing my craft, my impact, all of that stuff. And for me, all of that actually, is what employee benefits really, really mean to me. But I can double click on any specific aspect that you want. But yeah, Shreyas, I think that's like a super crisp answer for like employee benefits is not just like the offers, but it's like holistically who's my manager, my craft, how am I feeling here, and like the impact I'm having.
Got it. Got it. No, that's very insightful. And this was the bigger change that you saw, that as an employee you have a bit of a smaller purview and lens, but as somebody who's recruiting and managing people on an everyday basis and building a team from scratch, for what it's worth,
Hmm.
you've started thinking more
Yeah,
holistically
man.
about.
Yeah, like, for example, like as an employee, obviously I'm looking at, hey, company should invest in my growth. And that means that they should give me enough opportunities to build my craft. They should help me financially, obviously, to upskill myself if there's like courses I want to do or something like that, right? And also the way they treat me, like, side perks of how we were treated Diwali, for example, at Razorpay, right? Or, when
Mhm.
we got promoted, a letter went to our parents at Razorpay, saying that,
Yeah,
hey, your
yeah.
child's doing amazing, all of these things. And these all are holistically what really I define as employee benefits. So for me, it's a little bit more larger. But when I became a founder, I think you start looking at it a little bit more holistically. I started actually looking at like a product. I don't want to make this a GrowthX session, but
Of
I
course.
felt like, hey, if I translate everything that Razorpay did at, let's say, a 2,000 employee level, that to my own startup, it's probably going to be a recipe for disaster. Like, it's just not the right fit. I said, as a product, what's the MVP for employee benefits, right? So I'm like, okay, let's say person X is reporting to me, this is where they're trying to go, right? And all of these people, for where they're trying to go, what kind of benefits can I provide them from a professional aspect, mental aspect, and an emotional aspect, right? And obviously that feedback is taken from them and only then done, like that benefit or that perk or that reimbursement is given and at an ad hoc level. Why? The core job to be done for me is to understand what perks really matter to the first set of folks for me, right? Then it's about, okay, these things are definitely relevant, and now let's like put them on a document. But once you put them on a document, the adoption of those perks is very, very related to how you got them. And if you've never ever done that approach of talking to your employees, actually figuring out their problems and then building those perks out, that adoption is going to be like super bad, right? Sorry for
Yeah.
slightly longer answer, but yeah,
No, I
hope
mean,
that.
you've made like the people policy a PRD, and I wouldn't expect any better from you. Uh,
Yes, I have actually. My God.
but cool. Moving on, right? Like, but in those first couple of weeks, months, years, when you started up, what caught you completely, left field? What caught you unaware about
Hmm.
figuring out what employee benefits are through your startup?
Hmm. I think um, I thought, okay, that what now I've lost all my hair. I mean, I must have learned something, managing a team, building a team, all of that stuff, right? But I think we really underplay the infrastructure that large companies have built for mid-senior managers and above for to help them thrive. What I mean by that is infrastructure related to getting those perks ready, the benefits, the entire operationalizing of the OKRs, all of those things need to be built ground up. You are vastly successful and efficient because of all these privileges that you have as a larger brand working in that company. So when I became a founder, it was like quick reality check, right? None of these have been built in, and your efficiency to deliver those benefits is going to be really low. So you need to start from day zero. It can employee benefits or overall looking at employee benefits cannot be something that's an afterthought. It doesn't mean that you go super overboard spending like 3 days out of your 7 days working on employee benefits, but starting with an hour or two every single week or even alternate weeks compounds in a year, right? So one of the things that I realized is that I need to look at it, number one, from day zero. That means building out, talking to my team in their one-on-ones, building out their 5-year goal, where they are trying to go, not just professionally but also personally. And then kind of build out a learning map per se, saying that okay, this is what you need to do for 5 years, right? Let's say you want to become a director, say, for 5 years. That means in 4 years you need to become an associate director. That means in 3 years you need to become a senior manager or whatever. That means this year you're here and your skill gaps are here. Let's build out this learning map. I'm just talking about professional learning. We map out the same for, let's say, personal reasons as well, right? Personally or financially, I'm trying to buy a house, and my only job in that one-on-one is not to like talk about tasks, but specifically trying to really build out this map with this team. And it's been over a year now, and I think it's been phenomenal. All of my like team looks up to that one-on-one. It's super exciting for them because we don't talk about GrowthX, we primarily talk about their growth. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's like the first thing that I realized, that bro, I can't compete with razor pace perks, but what I can do is I can do this. So yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're somewhere the real balance, as I'm gathering, like and this is not like a callback to the title, but in the real balance to benefits and budgets is sometimes an investment of another sort, right? The investment could be time. The investment could be your effort as a founder, as a leader, to start literally saying everything is growth is everything, right? I feel like we're having like a demo day session here right now, but but but
Yeah.
thanks for sharing. Um, Another interesting question. The minute we thought, hey, we're talking to UD, what can we talk about? And you're in a sense in the talent business yourself, right? You're helping
Yeah.
people upskill, and a lot of companies, including Plum, hire from GrowthX. You are surrounded by talent, like an insane amount of talent. These people who are high agency, willing to be upskilled, obviously putting in the initiative and effort towards upskilling themselves. How are you not just hiring everyone? How are you optimizing for your talent parameters while you're being surrounded with so much talent?
I mean, oh boy. To be honest with you, I think a good first out of the first 10 employees, a good 40% or four of them were GrowthX members. And I wish I could hire everyone. It's just that a lot of GrowthX members are also super expensive. So I don't think I can really go out and hire everyone. Plus, a lot of the people that are there in GrowthX are growth product strategy, right? Whereas those roles are fewer at like a super early stage, at 20
Right.
employees where we are at. But I think there's also an underlying feature, and that is like completely sometimes missing in most people, is that in your early days, in your first 25, 50 people, it's all about getting people who are extremely aligned to the mission. So if you look at a big circle, right, of people who are competent, okay, then people who are actually in your budget, then people who are willing to apply to your company, they actually clear your rounds, and then being aligned to your mission, that's a very small circle, right? And that's, I think, one of the core reasons why we don't end up hiring all the 2000 plus members of GrowthX. But in a way, they're actually GrowthX brand ambassadors, so I'm happy about
Of
that.
course, of course, of course. No, we
Yeah.
were just thinking, imagine you're running one of the country's biggest talent pools, and if you couldn't hire, that would be some serious irony. Let's double down a little bit on benefits, right? As a
Mm,
as
mm,
an overarching theme. You spoke about categorizing benefits. Like, hey, what do they
mm.
need in terms of their career growth? What can I put in terms of budget? How are you splitting this? Like, there is obviously a financial
Hmm.
component, and that's not non-negotiable. Obviously, as a company of your size, you now have to start thinking of insurance and other kinds of benefits and perks. It could even be free sleepy owls for everyone, right, in the office. How are you thinking about this? What part of this is quantitative? What part of this is qualitative? What part of this is just hunch?
I think it's a recipe that has a lot of qualitative today at our stage. But before I begin, in the chat, very quickly, folks, what's been like your best benefit from whichever companies that you folks are working on right now? What's been your best benefit that a company gives you? It can be in any aspect. It can be a perk. It can be a manager thing. It can be a role thing. What's the number one thing? And as I answer this question, I want to see where you folks are at, right? But for us, primarily, I think number one, quantitative obviously is completely compensation, and an extremely large part of that is ESOPs. And we
Got
are
it.
super duper generous with our ESOP policy because quantitatively, I can never match that crore rupee budget that a Google is going to give you, right? I can do ESOPs and compensation only. Qualitative, and there are obviously other stuff, right? Like for example, if someone comes and tells me, hey, I want to upskill in no code, okay, and I want to do this course 100%, do it. If it's aligned to your learning map, do it. I want to be part of this and I want to do this, go ahead. We don't have like a budget per se that hey, this is exactly what we are going to spend on person X and Y. Right now that part is ad hoc, and which is fine because I want to learn what's really important for my employees right now. Qualitatively, it's I think one of the things that keeps coming up to us is like, hey, working from anywhere. That's a huge benefit for most people. It's slightly different, by the way, for early stage people. I'll come back to that. But for anyone with 4 years and plus experience, that's one. Second is building their careers. So one of the things that we've realized during the interview process, that feedback that comes to us is that, hey, I felt like I've already learned a lot. I felt like you folks were invested in my career, the way you were giving me feedback, all of those things. And that doesn't stop once someone's hired at GrowthX. So qualitatively really building for their 5 year goal, right? And then finally their well-being, right? Financial well-being. So Abhishek takes like literally sessions on financial planning every single week. And there's like a check-in. Hey, did you do this? Did you save into this? Did you put money here? Right. Then there is obviously the fitness streak that Kshitija started, which is every single person's putting in. Okay, just take a step back. We are in the business of transformation at the end of the day, right? And one of the things that we've realized is that fitness is also a very similar journey or process. So someone who's able to do that transformation themselves can also build better products. So fitness streak is one of our favorite Slack channels where every day you got to post an ugly, beautiful, doesn't matter, a photo of you getting into shape, right? And I think that consistency, that habit building really stems and then helps us build better products. But yeah, I think quantitatively compensation, ESOPs, and any kind of courses, anything that they want to do. And qualitatively is looking at their professional, mental, and physical well-being.
It's wonderful, wonderful to hear. I mean, and it's so interesting. And just to give you some context, right? Like at Plum, we've been toying around with the idea at a very early level of wellness OKRs. You know, like how everyone can have, and to their own definition about how they can be better themselves, feel better themselves. But we got a couple of answers, and I just want to take a quick peek. And while, of course, Santosh has said corporate flight tickets, another user has said moving around Bangalore as a relocation is one of the great benefit. Asmita has said free counseling sessions, which one of the top benefits as recorded by most proper reports. Research indicates this is one of the benefit that most employees value. But Sankalp, what timing? A day after Valentine's Day highlights they get breakup leave. I'm really glad some company out there is thinking of all the broken hearts.
All the best, Sankalp. I
Wonderful.
hope everything is fine.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Yeah.
cool. Moving on. You just spoke about your learning map. Now that was a very interesting word that you used for one of your, as the quantitative, but also kind of a qualitative aspect
Yeah,
of how
qualitative
employees grow.
mostly. Yeah.
The learning map, that what are they learning, how and how can we do that? Um, how does your roadmap look? What in an ideal world in 3 years time? as a founder, would you have a slide in your office like Google does? Would you have cookies at an arms jar? What is your dream of the best benefit that you could give your team?
I think I think all of the benefits that I said at early stage, this is very relevant to early stage, qualitative, etc. that we are building out. I think in, let's say, when we start early scaling, let's say 100 plus employees, 200 plus employees, at that part, I think it's all about ensuring that whatever has worked for the first 50 employees, that gets productized, because we've operationalized it, but productized, and the adoption is a key aspect, and that can mean benefits across learning. So giving them access to any kind of upskilling that they require, any kind of fitness that they require, this is for us very relevant and transformative, any kind of mental health sessions, or any kind of therapy sessions basically for mental health, etc. Those can be provided, and that adoption is very key. At super aspirational level, I would obviously, you're looking at very, very, very different things. Your budget over here right now is actually divided into, okay, and let's be frank, right? A lot of people actually use perks, and it works for a lot of people, is for acquisition also, for acquiring talent. So the way I look at it is, today at early stage, usually people are deploying stuff for engagement and retention and even early scaling. But as you become larger and larger, and you want to acquire 500 employees, right? Then your perks start becoming a lot to do with acquisition. What are the cool perks? Like, for example, maybe a breakup perk might come, right? And that might make some news as well. But acquisition related perks will kind of come up, very, very cool stuff. Then there'll be onboarding. Okay, why, right after you're onboarded to the company, what kind of perks are you getting? Engagement, retention, stuff like that. I think that's how I
Oh my
look
God,
at it. Yeah.
you used
So yes,
every
I
word.
am a growth nerd. I'm a growth nerd at heart, and I apply everything.
You used acquisition and engagement and retention and
Yeah,
everything.
yeah,
But
yeah. Hey,
quick,
all the
quick
HR
segue
folks are
from
going to relate to me here, because this is exactly how they're looking at it. They're like, okay, this is going to help in
I'm sure.
acquisition. This is going to help in retention.
Yeah, no, I'm sure, I'm sure.
Oh my
But quick segue for the audience, because we already asked Judy, what's a dream perk? What would you really like? That obviously your company, and no company is probably giving it right now, but you really wish would be a reality. Drop it in the comments and we'll keep reading. Moving on, Judy, budgets are a real bummer, right? Like budgets are a real constraint. And while you've raised a handsome round, congratulations again. You obviously didn't
So yes,
always
I
have
have
that.
to highlight this. We are a profitable startup. Okay. We're not.
No, wonderful. Congratulations, congratulations. And
Yeah.
I'm sure all your investors are happy. But while navigating through that process, right? Like, how does figuring out, hey, this is an amount that I'm happy to invest in the well-being of my
Hmm.
employees. How do you arrive at that number? How do you justify
Hmm.
that to yourself? Should you even? Is
Hmm.
it a bit of a market parity measure, or is it something that just you think is well deserved?
I think that's a great question. I think it stems to the founder. If a founder, most founders, the reason why they keep negotiating on like a rupee level with their, let's say, their CHROs or finance people, is typically they've never really invested on a one-on-one basis to understand like the benefits and the impact it has to their direct reportees, right? And if number one is, I think, at early stage, don't measure it, just experiment, and you'll realize the absolute crazy value that these perks kind of bring in for your employees, right? That's number one. Number two is, I think, after when you start scaling up, then you can take a very conscious, and I can tell you like multiple frameworks to kind of think about this budget, whether it's parity or not. But at the end of the day, it's very founder driven. Let's be honest here, right? That budget should be a substantial part, and the way I look at it is as a business outcome, because all of the things that you're doing actually are going to be input levers to drive your company better. Quantitatively, it's going to be for, let's say, hiring more people. Qualitatively, their performance, their efficiency, their word of mouth within the company about you, right? And there are different ways to measure it. But I think early stage, do not like, don't have like a set budget. Experiment, learn, right? Really understand. And as you keep scaling up your company, I think my approach at least is going to be that now that I understand what works, I'm okay to have a reasonable conversation with my CFO or CHRO. It's nothing to do with, okay, having, let's say, 2% budget or 5%, but thinking of, okay, we have to improve the efficiency. this is the allotted budget for it.
Got it. That's very interesting. And we've got a question from Sanam. What metrics matter the most? See, well, let's say one of your CHROs or your
Hmm.
CFOs is present in the budget.
Hmm.
You know, they're thinking of employee experience and well-being. How do you
Hmm.
evaluate that budget even?
Hmm. How do you evaluate? I think the way I would understand about like evaluating that budget is, or I think the real question over here is attribution. I think it's not budget to kar lenge, right? But like, hey, how much does this specific thing attribute to the growth, right? I'll say that business growth, but how much does this specific thing do to attribution? And if you are a scale dog, there are multiple ways to do it. Like with isolated groups, let's say you have two teams working in the same, like you have platform teams, both very similar products that they're working on, both very early stage, for example. You can have a very isolated group where one team has perks versus doesn't. And then you can look at two kinds of feedbacks. One is on the employee side and one is on the manager side. Is, hey, have you seen any uptick in terms of efficiency, in terms of, word of mouth being better, or people wanting to work a little bit more because of these benefits? But at early stage, I think before 50 employees, you should not measure it. It's like not necessary. It's not important. You should focus on your business and give your
Absolutely.
employees whatever they want for growing. That's my mantra.
That's so very interesting, because I was going to ask you what your recommendation or advice would be to fellow early stage founders, and I feel like that line's
Hmm.
already come out to say that stop, don't, this is not an ROI exercise.
No.
You This is, for now, it's an input metric stage. Just put in what you deem is right, and it'll pay off in ways that you didn't even think of.
Yeah, and it's not even like a very long time that it pays off by the Shreyas. I actually recommend founders doing what I'm saying just for a quarter. Okay. But
Hmm.
don't again just throw perks and then wish for adoption. Don't do spray and pray, right? Talk to them, build out their learning map, understand what's going to help them, and you will see insane ROI for this.
It's very interesting. That's very interesting. And some of them, you don't even have to quantify that ROI necessarily, right? Like,
Yeah,
you're
you
not,
don't have to.
it's too
You
early to
get
say this.
that qualitative feedback instantly, right? And you don't have to. A lot of people think that I have to come up with 100 perks, 50 perks. No, sometimes two or three really good perks are super enough for early stage,
Wonderful.
right?
No, that's a fantastic insight. I'm just going to small callback. I remember we used to ask this very specific question during our product marketing and product growth interviews about the value of a coffee machine in the office, right? The real value of a coffee machine in the office. And I'd like to hear the answers from the audience. Why do you think companies invest in coffee machines? Um, there might be a very ROI based answer, but it's not just to avoid lunch, post lunch naps. Let me tell you that. But but be very interesting to hear. Um,
I think I'm going to look at the answers and then tell Abhishek, my co-founder, how many people are reading his newsletter as well.
oh
Because
yeah,
we
perfect.
just
Yes.
covered this. Yeah, we just covered this in the last week's article along with Sleepy Owl. But it's, I think, spot on, Shreyas. But yeah,
Yeah,
if you
yeah.
want me to take that answer, I can take it.
You'll do that at the end of this. We wait for a couple of answers, and after that,
Sure.
big reveal from UD about his and AP's views on why coffee machines are important in the workplace and how companies go about investing. Stay tuned in. We move on to the next section. You, like I said, you're at the heart of a lot of talent movement, right? Like you're you're seeing so much of talent around you come into a cohort, learn, upscale, graduate into perhaps a new job, or do their own jobs better. What are you observing from the sidelines? What are you seeing
Mm,
changing in that relationship
mm.
between employers and employees, between
Mm.
candidates and prospecting talent hunters? What's the changing relationship there?
Okay, so my entire viewpoint, just clarifying, is going to be about three specific kind of roles: product, marketing, and growth. Primarily with for people who are on average at least 5 to 6 years of experience. Okay, for these folks, what we are seeing, and we see hundreds of people like switch jobs inside GrowthX. I think what's coming out to be the number one reason, which was not even there, is the transparency about the company, about their business model, stability, profitability, and runway. It's becoming an absolute P0. For earlier folks, let's say 2 years experience, they're more okay to take that risk. Leadership to forget about it, right? But mid seniors also looking at that. Number two is role, impact, and roadmap. The transparency and the clarity, if you have as a company and you're able to do that either through a job description or through the interview process, is going to be absolutely key versus someone taking you or another company, right? And for our specific roles, founders or leaders that get growth or product, people want to work for a boss that they don't have to explain what they do. They at least understand, they get it, right? Sure, they don't need to be craftsmen in it, but they need to understand that, right? And lastly, which is becoming more of a scenario right now in the current market, and I hope the market improves, the brand of the company has started to play a larger impact as well. Because if I ask people here, hey, how many of you all are investing in crypto or any kind of small caps equity companies? And I'm sure like that will be 10% of the audience, right? If I would have asked the same question in 2020, I would have at least got 50% of people raise their hands. It's a mindset change of safety right now. So you're investing a lot more in FDs, for example. The same thing, people are, I think, also playing a little bit on brand now, right? Especially for mid senior professionals. So I think like these three, four things are super key. Number one is stability, transparency around stability. It's not to do with like the stability per se, but transparency about your profits, about your runway. Number two is run. If you can show role impact and the roadmap for this role, super critical, right? Leaders that understand that craft that they're working for, right? And lastly is the brand of the company. These are the absolute key things that happen. However, once the offer is accepted, to them actually joining, then the perks, the benefits, the aha moments that these employees get as part of the onboarding experience is super critical. A lot of times we all know, like I'll accept an offer, in 2 months I'm gone, right? And I think
Yeah.
just tying that through perks has been super critical, and I've seen this extremely well done by a lot of companies, especially shout out to Cred. I think they do it really, really well.
No, that's very interesting. One wouldn't assume that to be the break in the process.
Yeah,
And we have a bit of
yeah.
a thing here, right? Like at Plum, when I joined, it was very early stages. We didn't really have a marketing team, and from the early days, and I can't. We continue to do this, but the first meeting, the first interview round isn't really a screening round as much as it is an opportunity for me to pitch Plum to them.
Mm.
Because they've already cleared a barrier round, right? So, and
Mm.
it's at that point where I need to convince them that Plum is the best bet for their careers because these are high agency, high talent individuals. But I'll also take this opportunity to quickly, shamelessly say, "Hey, we are hiring at Plum. So, any of you know any good talent in marketing, please let us know." Uh, but I also want to quickly touch upon the fact that the talent that's coming into GrowthX and leaving GrowthX, right?
Mm.
Um, there's a heavy diversity in terms of experience. How do these benefits or these expectations or these perks change with seniority and with age? How do you think that happens?
Mm.
You've gone through
Yeah.
the career yourself. Um,
I think it matter. Like I'm again anecdotally talking about specific product growth marketing and this kind of experience. I think some things that I've seen, right? So early stage in terms of perks, they want on site instead of remote. By the way, because they're like, I have been with my parents for the last 2 years. I want to get out. I want to explore the new city. I want to really understand what's outside, right? They're also okay with more like risk, etc. And for them, the smaller perks of the company really, really are super attractive, especially when it comes to applying for a company, right?
hmm,
That
hmm,
goes down a little bit when you go mid senior. However, that impact of perks then starts happening during the onboarding experience, right? Once they're in the later stages of the company, how are they treated through perks or whatever it is, right? That starts building trust for them there. And for leadership roles, what I've seen is, for them, until they actually join the company, right, until then the perks are like a cherry on the cake, right? They are not super critical for someone with, let's say, 8 or 9 or 10 years experience that I'm going to give you, let's say, cult subscription, for example, right? Because for them they're looking at
hmm,
very different kind of things. So these are the three kind of segments I've seen.
It's very interesting. Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I remember my erstwhile employer, they were an international org, and it often happened that we couldn't attract a lot of employees who didn't want to work the night shift. And unfortunately, that shortened our pool. And it wasn't a night shift as much as having, a stand-up meeting at 9:30 p.m. And that was time for them with their families. And we had to respect that. We just couldn't avoid it. But it became an increasingly important thing with age when they had kids, when they were married or had familial responsibilities. That's a very interesting thing. That sometimes the perks you can't even. It changes so much with seniority and
Yeah.
with age. Awesome. Okay, so what we're going to do is, hey, to all the audience members, thank you so much. Now we'll take your questions, but before and while you're dropping in your questions for UD, I'm going to ask UD to take a quick look at the responses that have come in for the coffee question and give his own 2 cents. Sharwan says, no one goes outside anymore and time is saved. Sankalp says, coffee and chai promotes conversation and therefore impact culture. Alan says, coffee machine chats with colleagues are very useful. Another user says, coffee tea are an emotion and a good cup can uplift employee productivity. Revati says, coffee breaks give time to bond with coworkers, increase productivity. And Alan, Alan's got another point about something else. But yeah, like your thoughts and
Perfect.
what's your answer?
Yeah. First of all, Shravan, Sankalp, Alan, Revti, you're all right, by the way. So you're all right on like different aspects. Just gonna like add some incremental points on top of this. And you should definitely like if you want to double dive on this, definitely read the article that is on Growth Shots right now about why do coffee machines really exist, and they cost lakhs of rupees, by the way, every year, right? It's not just to look cool, right? I think primarily, yes, the efficiency of time that is brought in, efficiency of performance that's brought in due to coffee. Number one is primarily with respect to, okay, you don't have to go out to get it. Well, you can do it in office, so that's time is saved. Number two is it's also on the fact that a lot of conversations happen at the coffee station or by having coffee, and typically these conversations are usually, sure, 50% of the times they're very casual conversation, but 50% of the times they also end up being very professional conversations, right? Which again stimulates people to think a little bit more about what they're doing, etc. And lastly, caffeine. I mean, this is the world's best drug, right? In terms of performance, and it's been proven. There are research studies that have proven how much it's beneficial. So it's all of these three things that have really determined the crazy ROI that coffee machines get in your company.
World's best legal drug, you mean? Sorry.
It's the world's best legal drug. Yes, 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 I meant legal drug. Okay.
Awesome. Cool. We have a question from Ghana, who's from my team. Great point on learning maps. Is there any way we can expand this to other aspects like well-being and health?
That's a great question, Sanam. How are you, Sanam? It's been a long time.
So
So, sorry.
this question's from Ghana. Ganpati?
Oh, oh, my bad, my bad. Okay, I think they're looking in the chat. Fine.
Yeah.
Hey, Gana. So I think that's a great question. You can definitely do that. What learning maps are nothing but, let's say, it's actually it's determined through, surprise, surprise, through a growth model that we used to build in. So you have a goal for that. What's the input levers, and that becomes a learning map. So if you understand mental well-being and you start, I'll give you an example, right? Let's talk about health, right? So if your goal in 1 year is to lose 10 kilos, right? For example, now that's not actionable. That's actually a goal. The input levers for that would be 1200 of calories, no more than 1200 calories consumed, and 30 minutes of exercise. Now, for 1200 calories, what's the macro that you need to have in protein, carbs, and whatever? The same thing for exercise. What kind of exercises do you need to have, depending on your bone health and whatever other things, right? If you keep drawing that out, you can very simply have a weekly, monthly, quarterly goals to set for your mental health as well as for your physical health. So that's what you can definitely do that. We do that. So happy to share that offline with you, by the way.
Yeah, no, we'd love to take a look at that. I know
Yeah.
I've been seeing your Instagram stories about how you've been working out at the airport. and you're putting everyone to shame. Stop
This is
over
because of the
performing.
Streaks channel, and a shout out to like Shitaja who started the Streaks channel on Slack. We have to do it, otherwise I like because everyone's posting in my team, and I'm like, okay, I have to do this. Even I'm at the airport, I'm going to work out.
It's embarrassing, but okay, good for you. I'm kidding. Uh, uh, So one of the things there's another question, very interesting, but I wanted to share something, right? Like in the spirit of building in public, when I say I want to build the best B2B marketing function in the country, my team often asks me, hey, what does that mean? Right? There's two metrics, of course. There's your team is, you're overachieving on all your metrics. Your performance is the best. You're doing, but another indicator of how you're building the best marketing function is if you're able to attract talent from the best companies, right? If a marketer from one of the best companies in the world wants to join your team, then you've kind of built that brand for yourself. So the question from Sanam, and this is a very relevant question from Sanam, is like, how as GrowthX grows, how do you aspire to attract talent from enterprises, and what are those levers that will help you here?
Perfect. Great question, Sanam. So number one, I think startup folks definitely value the experience that an enterprise person brings in, right? The only filtering that a startup is trying to do, hey, is this person okay to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty if required, right? And one of the things that we've really realized that why people switch from enterprises to startups, or let's say a smaller company, is because they feel like a cog in the wheel, right? So they want a lot more impact, a lot more ownership of things, of doing things, and a lot of creating a lot more impact around those. So one of the things that we even teach at GrowthX for hiring hours for growth specific focus is that being very clear around your job description is great, but really helping them visualize about what job they're going to do on a day-to-day basis is our job description. You can check out our careers page, and we also very transparently have our 30, 60, 90 for this person mentioned there along with OKRs, right? So they exactly know what they're getting into. And whenever someone's joined from a larger company like I wouldn't say Coinbase is an enterprise company, but anyone who's joined from a larger company, let's say TCS is a super large company, but it's primarily being because of the ownership, the clarity, and the craft that they'll be able to build by joining small company. And this is the only thing you want to optimize for. If you optimize for enterprise people just wanting to feel cool being in a startup, then you're going to have another very difficult conversation during the appraisal process, right? So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my answer for you.
But Yuri, do you think there is a space for equitability? Like the only way a startup, like a promising startup like GrowthX, can
Hmm.
even consider attracting somebody from one of the
Hmm.
largest companies in the country, is at
Hmm.
least there needs to be certain parity in what's being offered. Like obviously there's
Hmm.
the compensation
Hmm.
element, the perks and
Hmm.
benefits that they're getting.
Hmm.
Some of those just end up becoming a part of their lifestyle. Some of those things just end up becoming a non-negotiable aspect of their expectations, and
Yeah,
those aren't. I mean, the startup tag can't let you, skim around that. Just because you're a
correct,
startup, you
correct,
can't not do some things, right? Give certain
correct,
basic benefits. I'm
correct.
sure you'd agree.
There is, yeah, I agree. There is an elasticity to
Mm,
this craft, the ownership
mm,
that brings. So they are most people at GrowthX who've joined early days have actually taken pay cuts to come inside GrowthX, right? And
mm,
this is people from GrowthX members as well. Usually, the way to do this is to have a lot of ESOP pool ready, and your ESOP pool starts looking a lot more valuable if your
mm,
startup is actually creating impact in the ecosystem, has a decent business model in place, so they do know that those things definitely start impacting. Even then you will still lose out on people. The reason why GrowthX is specifically in a very special place is because most people who come from enterprise or a large company have actually experienced GrowthX products. So they've
mm.
actually built a lot of trust around us, about me, about Abhishek, and how it will be like to work with us. So that attraction to work with GrowthX is really, really high. I might be in an unfair advantage place, and this is not relevant for everyone. But the core is if they've experienced your product, they're more likely to join you. That's the insight.
That is so interesting, um, because they get to experience GrowthX before even considering joining you folks. But that's
Yeah.
a very interesting acquisition play. But one of the things I want to do through this conversation is I'm going to leave my content team with you to build what could possibly be a health and wellness growth roadmap that we can take to our, we've got a few thousand companies who trust Plum for their employee health and benefits. But if you're able to showcase through your math and your modeling some incremental benefit to their employee wellness, that'll be very interesting.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Yudi. This has been a fantastic conversation. We've got to learn so much. More so from, like I said at the beginning, Yudi the individual, Yudi the entrepreneur, Yudi the people leader, and not just Yudi the growth expert and the newsletter creator or the podcaster. But no, thank you so much for this.
Thank you
And it's
so
been
much, Shreyas. Yeah. Thank you
what
so
we'll
much,
also
Shreyas.
do.
Thank you. Sorry,
Sorry.
you were saying something.
No, I
No,
was
I
just
just
going to
want to
say,
like say that I had a great conversation. This did not feel like actually felt great talking to you. And thank you so much for the Plum team, Ghana as well. I think you folks have been amazing. Thank you everyone who joined in. On a Wednesday evening. I know it's peak weekdays for listening to some. I hope so. It was not very people gyan, but you could take back something and use yourself. So thank you so much for joining in.
awesome. So, folks who've joined in, we'll also request Yudi to respond to a couple of questions that you might have had offline, even after the event. We'll keep checking the thread, whatever we can add. We'll certainly like to. Thank you so much for joining. We hope you had a great time. Cheers.